I wanted to record just a fairly quick video for students who are new to GitHub, and because those in my programming classes and soon to be those in my web development, introduction to web development, will be having this set up as well. This is a fairly common thing when folks are new to Git and GitHub. So, just to be clear, that GitHub is a hosted website. Okay. It does provide this nice graphical user interface that at the very beginning of the semester students use. But what happens is that eventually you clone it into your local system. And then you learn the Git workflow and then push your code out to GitHub because that's where you share it with me or you share it with the class. But what can happen sometimes is that students, once they set up their repos and then they clone it locally, they get a little like I can still use the GitHub interface. And the truth is, you can, but it'll cause conflicts because Git, by its name, its version control, will want to control the code, and it will assume once you clone that your local is going to be the master from where everything flows. Now, I'm going to show you how to fix it in this, but I just want you to know the intent is once you clone, don't change anything on GitHub, only change locally. But let me give you an example of how this could happen. I have on my local system clone, and I've set up a directory for this, and this just happens to be in my JavaScript class, but it doesn't matter. And I have some code, and I already have the directory open, which, by the way, as a reminder, when you, I'm sorry, I had the terminal open. When you first time coming into the terminal, if you're opening it new, it will default, and you can do pwd, but you can also just see what directories it is in. So one first thing, just get used to, is either navigating, which I think is a good idea, right? Change directory, using some of that tab interface just to make it easier. And I think that's good, but you can also just open an integrated terminal, okay? Now I'm going to, before I do anything, just make sure I don't have anything. Now I have some other things, but in this directory that I'm in, there's nothing, no changes. Okay. So I'm good. So at this point, again, the workflow would say work from here and then push. But let's say, and I'm just going to move over here because GitHub, and now I'm showing you what not to do so I can show you how to fix it. GitHub still has this really nice interface of being able to edit a file. And you might think, and maybe you're away from your system and you're like, I just need to do something real quick to that. So I just want you to see that what happens if you do the following. If you edit a file, okay, and then you come in here and I say, hello, GitHub world, okay, and then I do have to commit this, right? So I still have to commit it, and I'll just leave the standard commits in there, or a standard boilerplate, we call it. Okay. So now what happens is you don't think about it. You're like, okay, we're done. We'll move along. But then later you come around, and you're doing the work for my class, right? And let's say I had you write some more code, right? And more work. And then you're like, okay, I know how to do this Git workflow Rio, and I'll go Git add star. Well, actually, I'll start with, and by the way, up arrow will always cycle through your commands. Okay, so at this point, I can tell that, am I on the right one? Yeah, so I'll just do Git add star, Git status, and I see that I have a modified file, right? So I've added it into the repo. So now I would do git commit, commit that with, again, I generally give you what the commit messages are, but I'm just going to say updating local here, right? And then I'm thinking it's all good because now that I've added it and I've committed it into my local repo, this command, and let me just clear before I do it, this command of git push is going to now take the work, because if you look, by the way, this is still the old version, and actually the not synced version, but the one that I changed on GitHub. And so now when I go to push, it's going to go, oh, there's a problem. And, this error, when you first see it, can be like, oh my God, what did I do wrong? I don't know how to do this stuff. And it's a very normal reaction, but just know you totally can fix it. Now, there's a couple ways to fix it. One thing is I teach how to use Git on the command line. There is an interface for GitHub as well. Okay. It is over here. So I could navigate through and find, let's see, I think this is my, and actually, if you're not sure, okay, this is my public. Uh, just looking for those changes, right? So right now it's not. Oh yeah. So actually, I need to do one other thing because what I need to do now that I have this error, I need to do another Git command I haven't shown you, and it's called Git pull. So what Git pull does is it goes out to GitHub and it pulls in, right, anything that's out there. Now this is actually, I do this very often when I clone your repos. I pull your code into my system, but in this case, you're pulling your own code in. And the reason we're doing that is so that we can see these conflicts. So I'm going to clear the screen first, just so that this command I'm going to do pull. Okay. And notice what happens. A couple things here. First, this looks crazy busy, right? So, but if you kind of slow down and read it, now this actually assumes this is the file you had actually in conflict. And if you didn't have this open, that is one of the reasons. Like if you were just here, right, and you had this open, first, if you didn't have it open, you want to go open it, but maybe it's a file you haven't worked on in a little while. Maybe it's been a little while since you've seen it. That's where maybe this interface will help you, right? So this interface is trying to give you that, oh, hey, this is where, you had some issues, merge changes, right? So here we could do it here, but I'm actually going to do it on the command line, but I want you to know you could do it here as well. And then what you can do is sync. There's actually an option here to sync this. Where's it at? Changes. Just looking for the sync. I've done it with sync. I've done this a couple of, oh, there it is. So push and pull. So that's another way to do it once you accept it. But I'm going to show you in the command line because I think it's a better way to do it. So the first thing I would do is in this file, I'd figure out what do I want. Okay, you can see this is what I had locally. This is what I had out on GitHub. And this whole thing is wrapped in a series of I don't call it markdown, but just some kind of marking indicating where, the changes are different or where the code's different. And then if you look right at the top, there's actually some nice interface to say, hey, you want to accept the current change, you want to accept the incoming change, which would be this, accept both. I could do that. Or I could compare them if it was a long file. I wanted to compare them, bit by bit. But in this case, right, I'm just going to, let's just accept both. Now, again, you can look at the code and see where it would make sense. You can also just, by the way, modify this file by getting rid of this. Like if you didn't want to use this interface, just get rid of this head, get rid of this, get rid of this, and then your code would at least be able to for you to be able to do the Git workflow. Okay. But I'm going to go ahead and say accept both. So notice what that did is it did that exact thing, which I said get rid of it, but it did it fairly quickly. But now we have a change in the file, right? So now we need to do the, matter of fact, I'm going to use my up arrow. I'm going to do my git add. There it is, because I'm going to add that change in. I'm going to do my git commit. I'm going to say fixing conflicts. Okay. Now, at this point, the one out on the web is still the old one. And again, like I kind of showed before, it's not until you do git push that you actually, and now we've successfully done a git push, which is awesome. And now we can refresh GitHub to see that now it has all those in there. Okay, so we can again go through and do the process, but I just want you to know, right, that this is the way. So the lesson I hope you walk away from this video is understanding that conflicts do happen. Typically, it's when you're working in teams, but in this case, when you're new to GitHub, it can also happen. And there's just ways to what we call merging those conflicts. And that's kind of what we did with that interface. Not kind of, that is what we did. But there's multiple ways to fix it. Just try not to, especially in your newly coding experience, try not to. That way you don't have to see that message and think, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing, because it's okay. There's always an answer. You can also search for on Google, right? Get conflicts, how to resolve, right? There's some of the content here is more related to if you're working in teams, but you can go, and it doesn't hurt. It's good to go look at some of this stuff. Some of it's again a little dated, not necessarily targeted to where typically we would be. Okay, hope this helps you. Talk to you soon.